morning. Good morning, everyone. Did you have your morning coffee, everyone? Awesome. So how many of you went to the party yesterday? It looks like some of us are still at the party, those who are not here. It was a beautiful day yesterday. It exceeded our all expectations. We were hoping for 1,000 people to show up. Then we were thinking that maybe 1,400 would, but 2,600 participants. This is just mind-blowing. Thank you so much. It's amazing. My name is Zuzanna Lewandowska, and it is my absolute honor to be the host of the second day of Women in Tech Summit. I am a social entrepreneur. I have an NGO that is dedicated to educating talented kids to go to top universities. And I also work for Polish Przekrój magazine. For those of you who are not from Poland, this is the oldest news magazine in Poland. But there's one other thing that really makes me even more proud is the fact that 10 months ago, as of tomorrow, I became a mom of my baby girl, Camilla. And as I have been passionate about human development and how people really reach out to their most potential, since then I have been even more passionate to help women reach their fullest potential. So my presence here is really one of the exemplifications of that, and thank you so much for having me. This summit is really, in a nutshell, a miniature version of how the world could ideally look like. It is a summit about opportunity. It is a summit about education, about mentoring, about support, about networking. The world looking like that with all those features would be a rather perfect one. But speaking about opportunity, I would like to walk you a little bit through what the plan for today is, so you can feel comfortable navigating through the day. And I'm here, always here to help you out with this. So first of all, we have 4 events coming up on this main stage. In a few minutes, we will begin our first plenary session with 6 fabulous keynote speakers. The second plenary session will begin right after lunch, which is 10 to 3. So after you grab your last bite, please come over here where we'll have some amazing education here coming from our speakers. We also will have 2 panel discussions. One will be at 11:30. It will be moderated by the wonderful Zuzanna Ziomecka of Wysokie Obcasy, and this will be about female leadership. And the second panel discussion will be about STEM education and will be moderated by Justyna Janiszewska of Fulbright Commission here in Poland. So these are the things that will be happening on this stage, but of course, as you probably already know, there's so much going on, so much opportunity waiting for you around this great expo hall. We definitely invite you to attend workshops. I know that there may be still some slots available, so if you're interested in a workshop, check the program and go to the area where the workshop is planned, and the organizers will be most happy to help you and hopefully fill you in. There will be mentoring sessions. Some of our esteemed speakers and guests will be available for you throughout the day to help you, guide you, to give you advice. So please take that opportunity, grasp it and hold strong to it, because it really is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to get such a great mentoring. We do invite you to the Career Expo. Grab your CV, present yourself. This may be a life-changing day for you, hopefully. You may meet new business partners. You can switch careers. You can find a new job. You can decide to get into tech or move within it. So definitely take advantage of that. Also, outside of the building, there's this mobile science center. There's only one science center, mobile science center like this in Poland, and we brought it especially for you. It's quite cold and windy, as you probably have noticed, so just make sure you wear something warm before you go out. And definitely, please, if you haven't already downloaded our conference app, it's just enough to download the Eventuary app and then find the Perspektywy Women in Tech Summit, and then you will be on there. All the program updates and all the inside connections may happen there for you if you're on that app. We also do sincerely ask you to evaluate us. It is so important for us to evaluate our workshops or mentoring sessions, the whole conference, because this is how we will learn how to make a better event for you next year. And also, if you're on social media, please use the hashtag Perspektywy2018. Perspektywy is the Polish name for perspectives. So you can, if you want to check the spelling, check the programs. And before we move to the first plenary session, I would like to talk for a minute about IT4She, which is the organization standing behind this summit. And they have a voluntary program that they kicked off the past summer. And if some of you are students of IT, you might be interested. This is a program where young female students in IT went all across Poland to teach young school children STEM. And we'll watch a short video presenting it.
Program wolontariatu IT4She to jest działanie mające na celu zainspirowanie tysiąca dzieciaków w Polsce do tego, aby interesowały się studiami technicznymi, ścisłymi, nowymi technologiami. 50 świetnych studentek informatyki pojechało w to lato do Polski, do różnych małych miejscowości, do wsi i tam przez tydzień za darmo uczyły dzieciaki programowania, robotyki, druków 3D i starały się im pokazać, otworzyć nowe horyzonty technologiczne.
Podczas tych zajęć na początku, w pierwszy dzień, miałyśmy okazję zapoznać się z dziećmi, przekazać im ideę i powiedzieć przy okazji, czym jest internet za pomocą ciekawych gier.
Robiliśmy sygnalizację świetną, przejście dla pieszych. Zbudowaliśmy robota.
Myślę, że zajęcia z drukarki 3D tak naprawdę przysporzyły największych emocji. Kiedy dzieci się zgromadziły tuż przy naszej drukarce, one były wpatrzone w to jak w obrazy, dlatego że większość z nich widziała to dopiero po raz pierwszy. Te zajęcia bardzo pobudzają kreatywność, pokazują im, jak można myśleć przestrzennie i jak to, co sobie wyobrażamy, możemy przelać na kawałek plastiku i to pokazać. To sprawiło, że te dzieci naprawdę będą szukać kolejnych, dalszych, nowych technologii.
Drukarkę 3D. Bardzo fajne rzeczy z tego można zrobić. Polecam.
Natomiast kolejny dzień był przeznaczony na płytki Arduino przygotowane specjalnie dla dzieci, które jeszcze nie są dostępne na rynku, a dzięki tym warsztatom dzieci miały już okazję bawić się nimi i poznawać tajniki programowania.
Dzisiaj programowałem programy.
Co nas najbardziej zaskoczyło, to ich kreatywność. Tak one patrzą poza pudełko.
Awesome, huh? The program is called She for IT, and the organizer is IT4She. I love this. We're going to move to our first plenary session. It is my utmost pleasure to present to you our first keynote speaker. She is based in Singapore. She flew in here from Moscow because she's very busy. She's from Citi, and she is the managing director and head of consumer bank technology, and listen up, for the Asia Pacific, Europe, Middle East, and Africa regions, covering 17 countries. Quite impressive. And she, like nobody else covering so many connections, is so well equipped to talk to us about human-digital connection. Jane Opperman, welcome to the stage. Thank you. It's a pleasure to have you.
Well, good morning. It's a pleasure to be here. I don't know about you, but that video just filled me with hope. I love nothing more than seeing kids really get into technology and get excited about how it can change the world. Let me give you a bit of background to me and just why I'm here talking to you today. I grew up in the 80s. This was the decade that gave birth to IBM's first PC. But more importantly to me at the time, we saw an explosion of science fiction. And when I was growing up, we had films like Back to the Future, you know, kids with these crazy augmented reality headsets that just looked like, you know, nothing we'd seen before. And they used them to take phone calls and to control all the appliances in their house. We had Total Recall with driverless cars. I think there was actually a plastic dummy in the front of the car. And then a few years later, we saw films like Minority Report, you know, show us the power of gesture controls. And I must admit, when I was growing up, these things absolutely fascinated me. And crazy though it might sound, they really did inspire me to get into and learn a lot more about technology. And 25 years later, I still absolutely love this industry, and I love being part of a world that is changing very, very rapidly. You know, despite the fact that, you know, most of the heroes or the scientists in these films were all men, I do remember thinking that there was no way I was going to miss out on the opportunity to play a role in an industry that was really going to change the world we were growing up in. Now, bringing us back to today, artificial intelligence is really going to power the next wave of economic progress. And by 2020, a firm called Constellation Research has estimated that the industry will be worth $40 billion. So if you're wondering about you know, where to point your career and where the opportunity will lie, this is definitely something you should put in your sights. So one of the characteristics of AI, and what really sets it apart from other technology, is its ability to learn and teach itself. And when the best AI systems are set the task of learning, they can achieve some really extraordinary things. Now, a few years ago, Google's division DeepMind produced AlphaGo. And it was an AI that was developed to learn the Asian strategy game of Go. And they taught the computer by showing it lots of human versus human games. And eventually it went on to play the world champion, Lee Sedol, and beat him. Now, Google didn't stop there. They actually created the next version, which was AlphaZero, a more powerful version. And the way that they taught it was actually not by observing games, but it played games against itself. Then they went on to ask it to try and learn to play chess. And it took it just 4 hours to surpass the best human being in the world at playing chess. And one of the interesting things about this is that AlphaZero was never designed to play chess. And the scientists think that one of the reasons it was able to win so quickly was actually it came from a completely different perspective. And a great example, I think, about why different, diverse thinking to an old problem can give you a different result. Very relevant, I think, for anybody here today. So AlphaZero and the deep learning technology, it's all about machine learning. I forgot to change my slides. Okay. And the reason that it's so powerful is quite simple. Now, while humans are quite fantastically skilled at some things, it can be quite difficult to understand or program how we do it. Think about, you know, the way that you might recognize a person's face, a friend, somebody you know. Trying to actually program that into a computer is almost impossible, you know, for us to understand the physiological steps that that takes. So machine learning works in a very different way, where we design code that can actually start teaching itself. And it doesn't do that through rules and code. The little chap on the video earlier who said, I programmed a program. We actually use huge amounts of data. And machine learning spots patterns in this data and learns and teaches itself. Far more vast amounts of data than any human being could possibly assimilate. Now, there are lots of different types of machine learning. Some of them are here. We've got predictive systems that can help us predict the weather or different events, economic forecasts, for example. We've got natural language programming that can actually, in just about real time now, understand voice and text. And we've got things like machine vision that can understand pictures. Now, I don't know, can I have a show of hands? Who here has been asked to prove they're not a robot by clicking on some squares, you know, looking for cars and things? And it's ironic because it's actually, you know, we all know it's a robot asking us to do that, which is pretty crazy. Are you okay? Oh, thank you. Okay, so maybe one more question. How hard do you think it is for robots to tell the difference between animals and food? Well, sometimes it's not quite as easy as we might think. I don't know about you, but I had to take a second look at a number of these pictures before I could tell the difference. My daughter gave me this one. Well, as it happens, it's not difficult for an AI. They practically get this right 100% of the time. So which is better, a computer or a human brain? Now, if I ask most people, you know, would you like your brain to work more like a computer? You know, lots of them have said, oh yeah, absolutely. So it's quite bizarre that during the last 2 decades, you know, many scientists have actually been trying to build computers that operate more like human brains. Now, the basic idea of some of this advances is around neural networks. And whilst a number of you might know, that for those of you that don't, it's all about putting together different nodes that process data, learn, and then connect with thousands and millions of other nodes to actually make progress and be able to spot patterns that we just couldn't possibly do. So AI is already making some remarkable advances in many of our industries. You know, any of you that use Spotify or Amazon will probably know that a lot of the recommendations, you know, as to the music that you might like or what you might like to buy, books you might like to read, you know, it's all done by some kind of machine learning or AI sitting at the back. Now, a lot of companies, as they ramp up their use of AI, are thinking about lots of different uses. This framework is actually about the use of AI in financial services, so my industry, and a number of different things become quite relevant. You know, AI is being used to make us more efficient, more effective. It's being used to inform our experts, but also innovation. And we know that there are many organizations running pilots or proof of concepts right now that impact people, products, and processes. We do think that this will see an explosion in new jobs. but we've probably got about 3 years before we really see most companies actually deploying this at scale. So you've probably still got time to gen up before all the explosion of jobs on the market. Now, we do know that if we approach AI in the right way, it will drive huge amounts of economic value. But in such a fast-moving world, it can be really difficult to know where to start. So by breaking it down into steps, we can get a much clearer idea of how to evolve the use of AI. Now, firms are using it in quite basic ways right now to automate manual processes and to make them more efficient. Google announced just last year that it had managed to map every single location in France in just 2 hours by feeding in the street view images that you see on Google into an AI. Now, years ago, that would have taken dozens of people, probably years to do. AI, excuse me, AI can also help augment the way that we work and support our workforce. And I think one of the really interesting uses that we're seeing is coming out of the health industry. So I think one of the best examples is probably in the way that a lot of the doctors diagnose cancer. So when a doctor suspects cancer, they'll take a sample and they'll send it off to a pathologist. And on an average day, a pathologist can look at hundreds of different samples made up of millions and millions of cells. And a few months ago, a group of scientists perfected an AI tool that they used to help them. Now, when we ask the AI to analyze the samples, is this cancer or is this not cancer, they get it right about 92.5%, 92.5% of the time. But when you compare that to the person, the pathologist, they're still actually better. They get it right over 96% of the time. But the real learning here was that when the scientists combined the human skills with the AI, the accuracy went up to 99.5%. And there are many, many examples like this where actually the combination of human and machine presents us a huge opportunity for advancements. One of the other areas where we believe AI can really help us is in customer service and playing a role in supporting customer care. Now, we're already seeing digital assistants and chatbots, and if, like me, you've used them, some are pretty good, some are still maybe not quite so good, but we're even getting personalized product and service recommendations on many, many of our kind of e-commerce sites. But I would say this, I think that right now, most of our AI applications still have a long way to go before they can get the level of accuracy, and particularly before they can understand the tone and play to the emotional piece. I think it's going to be a few years yet where a human intervention is still going to give us a lot better quality when it comes to customer service or the care industry. Now, for all the progress that is being made, there's still a number of companies, in fact most I would say, that have yet to embrace AI. And when we look at why that is, there's a number of key drivers. So it comes down to getting the right talent, prioritizing the investments, and there's still a lot of concerns about security, particularly given the huge amounts of data that you need to feed some of these AI machine learning programs to actually make them effective. For others, it's about defining compelling business cases, getting strong leadership support for these type of programs, and hiring more technology staff. That's a key message for anybody here today. City is very lucky to have a very talented technology team here in Warsaw already, but we will need more technology skills, and particularly in fields like AI. So please do take some time, if you haven't already, to talk to the City team here today. So in conclusion, you know, what can we really expect to see over the next few years from AI? Now, I met a chap called Toby Walsh recently, and he is Professor of AI at the University of New South Wales in Sydney, and he had a few predictions for us. So one of the things that he said we would see in the next few years was a revival of old movie stars. So we're likely to see in the future movies with Marilyn Monroe appearing alongside modern-day movie stars, and we won't know that it's AI or not real. The other prediction that he made was that a team of robots would beat Germany at soccer. I don't know if anybody else thinks that's a crazy idea, but we'll wait and see. But maybe the most fascinating one is that AI will provide us daily advice. We'll have a doctor in our pocket giving us advice on our health. There was a Japanese scientist that came out with an invention that's not quite ready yet. I'm not sure I would use it today. But we're going to have toilets that talk to us and analyze things that might appear in the toilet and give us indications as to whether there are some early warning signs about, you know, things that we need to take action on our health. You know, right now, you know, scans, ultrasounds, you know, some of the technology that's used to spot, you know, many of our health issues early are still quite primitive, whereas, you know, these tests are already indicating that this might be able to spot something years in advance of current technology. So, where to from here? How do we prepare for a world where humans and machines are living and working side by side? Is this something that we should be worried about in terms of how it impacts our future, our kids, our jobs? Well, there are lots of different views. I'm definitely in the camp that says, you know, this is just another part of our progress, and it will create value. You know, most of the jobs today didn't exist 10 or 20 years ago, and I truly believe that as AI takes over some of the routine or vast data processing type work, we will see this mean more meaningful and different types of roles for humans to play. So I, for one, think that maybe just like the Industrial Revolution over 200 years ago, this will be good, but we'll probably go through, you know, this period of uncertainty. But I, for one, am thrilled to be in technology in an industry where I can at least play a role in the future. But I hope that many of you out there will join me in doing that. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for this inspiring speech. A true female leader. But how to become one, and how to inspire the next generation of female leaders. Our next guest, a wonderful leader herself, flew in to be with us here from as far as Minnesota. She is Director for the Data Intelligence and Digital Commerce Solutions at 3M. Let's please welcome Lori Tempelis. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Dzień dobry. I am thrilled to be here this morning. What a great event last night. I mean, who doesn't enjoy wine, science, 2,600 women, and music? In fact, I think the whole city was so excited they brought the party back to my hotel till 4 in the morning in the room right below me. But I'm here and I'm alive. So I'm happy to be here this morning to talk a little bit about how we can help to inspire the next generation of women leaders. I'll start off a little bit about my career journey and where I've been. So a little bit about myself. I've been married for 13 years. I have 3 wonderful children, a 7-year-old, a 9-year-old, and an 11-year-old. Don't forget my dog. It's adopted from the rescue. She's 2. You know, my kids are very active in sports, so when I'm not working, I'm at a hockey rink, a soccer field, a football field, a baseball field, and I think that's it for the moment. So I started my career after I got my graduate degree living in France in international business. I started in 1999 as a sales rep. And at the time, 3M valued, and still does very much, this idea of spending time with the customer. And it really created the foundation of who I am. I am a customer advocate. I tell all 91,000 employees at 3M all the time, none of us have jobs unless those customers value our service, our products, and our innovation that we provide. So that's how I started my career. Next, I jumped into Six Sigma, where I learned a lot about project management and how to drive results using data. Then I moved into a key account role, right? What I learned here was how to manage very large, very, very large, and complex and demanding key accounts. After that, I was asked to build a business in our maintenance and repair organization. So create the business model and then go execute it. So I was able to deliver on that model. After that, I moved into marketing. So jumping from sales, key account, and Six Sigma into marketing, and I managed a product line, creating campaigns that would drive growth throughout the United States. After that, I was asked to become a global portfolio manager, where I worked with our subsidiaries, including this one here, to drive growth internationally. After that, I became a U.S. business manager, and I managed a $600 million P&L, where I managed all the marketing team and really was about driving commercialization and growth campaigns for a large business and managing that P&L. After that, I moved to corporate sales, where they asked me to manage and create the sales strategy, which included our sales coverage model. How do we ideally cover the world with our products between inside sales, outside sales, and digital? I did that. I led the learning and development department, as well as all of our customer engagement activities. And from there, in 2016, I formally joined IT in the digital transformation area, where I was digital commerce solutions. And this was about creating an end-to-end experience for our customers. How do they engage with us from the minute they're searching for a product, all the way through purchase, all the way to service? We needed to create an experience for them that was seamless and frictionless. And then most recently, I was asked to add on to that role and become the Data Intelligence Director, which means data enterprise management for the globe. So as I look back at my career and how I've gotten to where I'm at, I realize there's about 5 things that have really inspired me as a woman in leadership. And today I hope to touch on each one of those 5 and inspire you, who are really our next generation of women leaders, sitting here right in this room. So the first one, work hard. I love what Estee Lauder says. I didn't get here by wishing for it or hoping for it, but by working for it. And how true that is. And if there's one message I could tell this room, a career is a journey. So you just saw mine, and I've been at 3M for 20 years. I'm only halfway there. I've got another 20 years to go. I often see young folks and older folks get frustrated at a moment in time. And some things are not in our control. And so the message is, control what you can. You know, there's going to be reorganizations inside your companies. There's going to be external market factors that are going to affect your career. What you can do is focus on the task at hand and work hard to achieve results. So the challenge is, how are you going to be smarter to achieve great results? Because being a woman in STEM, there's only 25% of all the careers are held by women. And some people will claim that, you know, I have to work harder to prove myself. What I would tell you is that may be true, but once you do it once, it's very difficult to ever be forgotten, if not impossible. So what a great advantage. I tend to look at these things with women in leadership as not a downside, but always look at the opportunity that you have that makes you different. So when you become successful in your careers, please don't hide it, but share it with others. Number 2, be authentic. So clearly I'm no Lady Gaga, and I wish I was at times. And 3M would be a very interesting place if we had more of these women here at 3M. But what she said holds very true. Don't ever let a soul in the world tell you that you can't be exactly who you are. I am very passionate about being authentic. And authenticity means when you bring your entire self to work, when your behavior matches your intentions. And we know that when you're authentic, it leads to overall workplace engagement, higher workplace satisfaction, better overall performance, as well as overall well-being. Now, who wouldn't want that? So 10 years ago, I had a female colleague tell me, I'm going to give you some advice, Lori. I said, okay, great, what is it? She said, you might not want to talk to people about your family, about the fact that you have children, because it may limit your career. People might not think that you're capable of taking on being a mother, being a wife, and a career. So I went home and I thought about that for a couple days. And at the end of those 2 days, I decided, nope, I'm going to do the exact opposite. So I went home, I printed off a photo of my family for my lanyard, I printed off pictures from my office and my desk, I put it on my screensaver at work, and every Monday morning when I walk into work, I ask my entire team, how was your weekend? What did you do? How's your family? The one thing I'm very, very proud of is I am a mother. I'm proud to be a wife, although always not a good one. And also, I am very proud of the fact that I'm a professional that wants to keep on growing and keep on learning. So if I want to be authentic, I need to lead by example. So that's exactly what I try to do. I think a lot of times women, when they don't feel that they can be authentic at work, they lose motivation to do what it takes to climb to those different levels in the corporation. And also, I think women might struggle a little bit with how to balance their femininity without being too masculine. It can be energy draining. But here's where I encourage you. We all need to create this environment where we can bring our authentic selves to work. It makes the company better, it makes you better. Number 3, believe in someone. So I heard a lot yesterday about believing in yourself, and that's absolutely true. But what I believe is you need to believe in someone else and pay it forward. So I'll never forget I was a sales rep out in Phoenix, Arizona, and I got a phone call from a leader in St. Paul that said, we think you should come to St. Paul and be a Six Sigma black belt. Of course, I had never heard of it. I said, well, okay, what's the role? You're going to be doing one-way ANOVAs, regression testing, and statistical significance. And I said, oops, time out. I think you called the wrong person. She said, no, your boss said that you're really great at solving problems, that you have great work ethic, and that you'd be really good. So I was going to be the very first woman to come out of the field to become a black belt. But I was honored and humbled that he believed so much in me that I could do this role that I had never heard of. And at some point in your career, there becomes a tipping point. It's no longer just about you and your promotions in your career, but it's about believing in someone else and paying it forward so that we all get better as a whole. So amazing things happen when women help each other, and I encourage all of us to do that. So mentor somebody. Now, anytime somebody asks me to mentor them, I say, okay, here's the deal. I'll mentor you if you mentor me. All of you out there have some value to add. It's not just about people with experience mentoring you, but it's about exchanging ideas. Number 2, join a forum, a women's leadership forum or a special entrance forum, something that you're interested in that you can add value. But number 3, encourage other women. When you see another woman be successful, get promoted, do a great presentation, encourage them. I often find that women aren't as good at doing that, and we all need to become better. So even though you may not like their work style, maybe they're not your best friend, we have to acknowledge each other, because when we lift each other up and inspire each other, we're better, and we're better together than we are alone. Number 5, know your strengths. So I like this quote from Drew Barrymore, which is, life is very interesting. In the end, some of your greatest pains become your greatest strengths. Most of us have a very poor sense of our true talents and strengths, and we focus on the weaknesses and flaws. And I think we're taught from a young age to keep fixing what's broken. About 6 months ago, I was asked to expand my digital director role and move into data analytics and enablement. So the CIO called me into his office. He said, effective today, you're going to be doing data intelligence. So enterprise data management for the globe, adding 350 people to who I manage. And I looked at him and I said, were you drinking when you decided this last night? And he looked at me, and I use humor at work, but he smiled at me. He goes, you can do this. And the point is, I realized about 4 weeks later why they put me in this role. It certainly wasn't because of my experience in data, but it was because of my strength. And my strength was this. It was to take complexity and simplify it and gain adoption. So what I was doing is translating the technical into business and growth. And that way we could take IT to a totally different level. So the message here is focus on what you're naturally good at. Always work on improving, but focus on what you're good at rather than what's broken. And lastly, face the fear, take a risk. So do I like public speaking? Absolutely not. In fact, it scares me. But I'm here because when you get stretched and uncomfortable, you get better. And the only way for you to be your best self is to continually push yourself every single day. Taking risks is an essential part of delivering results, both for the business and for yourself. So take a risk, face a fear. Don't be afraid to say yes to new opportunities and challenges that come your way. Our lives would not be the same if it weren't for those before us who had dared to test the limits of your imagination for technology advancement. Lastly, and most importantly, don't be afraid to fail. Great leaders learn from making mistakes, and they also learn from the experience in doing so. So dream big, be creative, and get out of your comfort zone. So those 5 things are what have helped me, and those 5 things are all in your control. So focus on what you can control and let go of some of the things you can't. I'm going to leave you with a short video that what inspires 91,000 people at 3M to come at work every day. It'll highlight our technology and our products that help make our families better, that help make our communities better, and most importantly, help make our customers better. With that, thank you, and good luck in your career.
$91,000 working to make every day, any day, a better way. This better way isn't a road or a path because none have done this or that or thought this, thought like that. We began as a curious child. 91,000 thoughts ran wild and there was no limit to what we could imagine. Imagine that. Imagine back. We can. Because we know about I love yous and see you soon's, from the bounce in your shoes and what got us to the moon and back on the ground, to underground, where 33 souls were found and brought back into the light of the sun, that shining star we wish upon. Together, we're the team that builds the dream by working harder, working smarter. It's you and me, improving industries from factory floors to open signs on every door. The ways, the days that keep our oceans blue, and the air too, every breath pure, then sure. We'll take your breath away in ways you've never seen, with 91,000 dreams, I mean. For here there is no fail, just get better and prevail. It never ends, just begins again. Higher and brighter goes this spark, this fire, a desire to succeed and exceed what came before. And what's more, it's not just solar power or wind power, but brain power, people power. So climb that tower of what if, and why not? Find the answers in the earth, every grain of sand, the universe, it's in your hands. In a telescope, the microscope, we magnify and multiply possibilities and our abilities as humans to make the world a bit better every day. And when it's done, oh, it's never done. Our work is not even halfway done. So come on board. We've just begun.
Thank you so much, Lori. Lori gave us some amazing quotes by Estee Lauder and Frank. Lady Gaga, I'll give you another one. Bring your entire self to work. Lori Tempelis. Thank you. But now, before we can actually bring ourselves to work, there's one obstacle that mostly women face when it comes to the world of tech. which is a mental one, and it says, well, but I'm not technical enough. And we have a wonderful speaker who will bust that myth once and for all of us. She is Leslie Marjorie-Banks, Head of Applied Security at Royal Bank of Scotland, and also she is very involved in STEMET's program, that is a social enterprise that helps young girls between the ages of 5 and 25 to get more involved in IT. Leslie Marjorie-Banks.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Leslie Marshbanks. I work for the Royal Bank of Scotland, and it's my job to keep our customers and our colleagues safe and secure, particularly in a world that's fraught with cyber security threats. Some of the things I want to talk to you about today are, I'll quickly give you an overview about my route into cyber. It's not a typical route that I wound up working in IT, certainly, so I want to sort of share my experiences with you on that. And I'm going to bust the myth around, but I'm not technical. I did a mentoring session yesterday, and I spoke to lots of wonderful women, and there was two, and if you're in the audience, you know who you are, but before your bum even hit the seat, you said, I'm here, but I'm not technical. So that kind of just goes to prove that, you know, what we're going to talk about today is really, really important. And then finally, I'll talk about a bit of how I get involved with pulling girls into STEM back in the UK. And it sounds very similar to some of the initiatives that are backing this wonderful conference today. So here's hoping that I remember what I'm going to talk about, because there's nothing to prompt me on any of my slides. So my route into cyber, if we rewind a million years to when I was a teenager, I was very clear that I wanted to be a florist. Didn't want to be anything else. I wanted to be a florist. And I would tell my parents this regularly. Until such a point, as my mum pointed out, you do know the flower market's open at 3 a.m. and you'd have to get up really early. And I thought, oh, crikey, maybe that's not for me at all. So thankfully, my parents were a little bit more sensible and less flighty than I, and we struck upon a deal that I would go to university and I would study computer studies with risk management. I think my parents were several light years ahead of me in what was coming down the tracks, because it stood me in very good stead. It was possibly not a career, a choice that I would have made myself. It was quite a very technical role, but I managed it nonetheless, and I got my degree, and I ended up in my first job working in a bank back in Scotland in an audit function, doing audits of IT systems. And I remember very early in my career going out to do audits of an AS400 and thinking, oh, this is just not me. And I was getting through it, and I was getting to the end of the audits, and I had all my findings, and I absolutely did it. Some of my peers did it faster than me, but I was very capable of doing it. But I found that as we went through, maybe 2 years into the role, I realised that my skills weren't lying in the technical work. It was lying in the pulling together all of that information and going back to the business and saying in a very succinct and punchy way, this is what we've done, this is the holes, the gaps we've found, this is why you should care, and if you don't care, this is what will happen. So I remember doing a firewall audit and going back to the business and saying, these rules need to be changed, and if they don't change, within 24 hours, we're going to lose our whole corporate email gateway. And when you start talking in that language, that's when people start sitting up and listening to you. They don't really care that you looked at an AS400 system for 4 weeks. They're not interested in the fine detail. They want to know why they should care about something. And I found that that's where my skills were kind of moving towards. It was representing that technical information and wrapping it up in business language. So that led me to my next role, and that was in security, and that's the department that I remain in today. So there's 1,000 people within the department, and my responsibility is to keep customers and colleagues safe and secure. And given that we all work and operate in a digital world now, there are many threats that people need to be aware of. So, for example, I could be sitting 1 week with a large corporate customer who's just experienced £1 million fraud. And it's a very emotive situation to be in. But what I need to do is I need to equip myself and tell them where they could have done something more securely and how I can help them make sure that that bad thing doesn't happen again. Similarly, from a colleague point of view, only a few weeks ago there was a phishing email that came into the bank that purported to be a sextortion email. So fraudsters said that they had incriminating sort of sexual photographs of employees and that they wouldn't share them any further as long as they received 1,000 bitcoins. And of course, people automatically panic and think, they don't apply common sense and think, well, that's not possible. They just automatically panic. So it's my job to go out and allay the fears, make sure that no more emails hit any more inboxes, and to have those emotive conversations. So what I do is I make sure that I can, again, relay all the technical information into the stuff that really matters to people, the stuff they care about at that moment in time. Laurie spoke about her big break. I have a similar situation as well. I remember it was 3 years ago, my whole world, my career started to change for the better. And what happened was, I was sitting one day thinking about all the different materials that I use at the bank to educate my colleagues on the cybersecurity risk. And I realised that we were really missing a trick. We weren't doing ethical phishing. And to quickly define that, for those who don't know, that's the practice of sending a test email to your colleagues with a link in it and to see if they click it. And if they do click, then that gives you the opportunity to go and educate that population. And for those who don't click, you don't need to educate them because they know what the right security behaviours are. So we weren't using that, that service within the bank. And I really thought that was something that we should be doing. Now, what ordinarily I would have done is I would have sat down at my one-to-one with my line manager and said, I really think this is a good idea. But I knew what the response would be immediately. The response would be, yeah, but Leslie, we don't have the budget for that. Even before I would have finished my sentence, that would have been the response. So I thought, no. I need to go in here and be really punchy and well-researched. So I went away. I didn't tell anybody I was doing it. Crucially, I didn't ask for permission. I just went. I found out what my peers were doing. Turned out we were way behind our peers. I found out what the cost was to have these services. And then I had to do, probably the most tricky part was work out what the benefit would be. So I had to go away and size what the cost was for every time the bank experienced a spate of malware, for example. Say a server we were locked out of a server. How much did that cost in resource for us to get back to day one? So I pulled all of this information together, and the information contained within this paper, again, did not play to the technical how the product worked. I knew how the product worked, but my audience didn't need to know that at that stage. I just wanted backing. So I told them that it would cost £50,000, all of our peers are doing it, and actually it would save us, only one instance of malware is £300,000 to recover. So at that point I knew I had a paper that nobody could say no to, and I sat down with my manager and we agreed that absolutely yes, that's the way forward, that's absolutely what we should be doing. And lo and behold, we had mobilised within about 6 months. The good news story there was we were able to reduce the click rate from 50% initially of all of our colleagues clicked on the emails down to 8% within about 18 months. And then once you do something like that, once you're bold and you go out and you do something, it stands you in such good stead. My profile skyrocketed. I was invited to, today is a great example of, if I hadn't done that ethical phishing thing, would I have been invited here today by my employer? Would they have let me go? I'm not so sure. But as soon as you do something and you really sort of brace yourself and take the mettle, doors start opening that you would never have imagined before. This is an example of some of the doors opening. So I'm speaking in Pittsburgh on ethical phishing. So I'm deemed to be a subject matter expert on ethical phishing now globally, which again sometimes surprises me. But yeah, absolutely, we sort of do ourselves down, and we maybe prevent ourselves from moving forward if we aren't going to be bold. Another thing to mention, and again that Laurie touched on as well, is parenthood. I'm also a parent to an 8-year-old child, and I remember even before having him thinking, that looks really tough, seeing women coming into the office who've had to do the drop-off at nursery and all the rest of it, and thinking, I don't really fancy that. I think I'll put that off as long as I possibly can. And lo and behold, as with anything, the thinking about something is far worse. Things just happen, they work. the way that I make it work is I'm very clear on my non-negotiables. So I cannot negotiate on dropping my child off at school in the morning. I will be the person who gives them a kiss and off he goes into school. And people at work know that I won't be in the office before 9:15. I'll take calls in the car on the way in, absolutely. And Thursday evenings, it's a hard stop at 5 o'clock because we go to swimming club together. So as long as you're very clear from the outset and it's something that you don't really move on, I find that parenthood is imminently workable into a career. So please, if anybody's having any sort of anxious thoughts over how that works, as with most of things in life, you always find a way. It always works in. Organically, you will find a way to make it happen. So the sort of meat in the sandwich of what I want to talk to you about today is but I'm not technical, and we say it with an apologetic tone in our voice. And when I was invited to do this talk about 3 or 4 months ago, I thought, right, I'm going to set the clock and I'm going to see how many times I can hear my colleagues say this. And in a 3-month window, I heard 22 instances of this. Now, I'm going to fess up here and say at least 3 of those were mine, because although I know I shouldn't say it, I still find myself in that awful trap of doing so. Of those 22 times, all of those were women. I never once heard a male counterpart say anything of a sort of similar ilk. And the reason that it was an entire female population that were guilty of this was because we're more at the behest of imposter syndrome. And for those of you who I'm sure you're all very aware of what it is, it's probably a constant thread that's gone through yesterday and will continue to go through today. Imposter syndrome is the feeling of not being quite good enough, of thinking that one day somebody is going to come up to your desk with your coat and say, Leslie, we know you've been at the bank for 14 years, but we think you've been talking rubbish for those 14 years, so if you could just leave now, that'd be great. And that's what I think, maybe not on a daily basis, and it gets better over time as your confidence improves, but I still absolutely am prone to spates of those kind of things. If you think about back to your office, think about maybe somebody in your office, could be male, could be female, who's not very good with the people conversations, who's maybe a bit gruff and is maybe a bit abrupt. The chances are you will never hear that person who's about to go and deliver a difficult personal message go into that meeting saying, oh, do you know, I'm really low on emotional intelligence, so, making apologies. It just wouldn't happen. Admitting weakness, admitting sort of a gap in your knowledge is deemed to be a sort of sign of weakness. Another thing that's been levied at me as a woman in IT that I've heard in at least 5 or 6 times in my career, which always makes me flinch, is you don't look very technical. I can tell you that this skirt that I'm wearing is referred to as my Mary Poppins skirt in the office. And so I always attract comments like that. And again, to sort of hark back to what Laurie was saying, it's about not conforming. It's about never thinking, oh, crikey, right, okay, well, I won't wear this again, and I'll find something a bit more conservative because really, I want to try and model myself on a middle-aged white man wearing a navy suit. Don't ever conform to that. If anything, I go to the other extreme. I will sometimes look round shops at things that will provoke a reaction because actually I want people to remember that I'm here and I want to be noticed. So please don't ever conform. I think overall in the sort of I'm not technical space, what you can do proactively when you're caught in the grip of one of those attacks is to reflect back on your successes. So what I do is when I'm in a meeting thinking, oh crikey, I really don't know what's going on here, I shouldn't be sitting around this table, then I think, well actually, I'll cast my eye around the table and I'll think, well that person didn't deliver ethical fishing to 100,000 people in the Royal Bank of Scotland, I did that. So it's really taking stock and reminding yourself of why you're worthy and why you should be there. There's a lot of times when, I forget the fact that I could ably sit down and tell you about the different threat vectors of a distributed denial of service attack. But, there's a time and a place. It's about knowing your audience. So, yeah, reflect on your successes and don't ever conform. The next slide is really talking a little bit about what I do to engage females from as far down as primary school right up to university level and to get them thinking about STEM. What we do is, at the Royal Bank, we partner with STEMx, which is very similar to IT4She here. We go out to primary schools and we start talking about STEM at that point. And then we continue that conversation in high school when they start choosing their subjects that they'll sit exams in. And then again, we revisit this in university. Interestingly, a lot of the perception around STEM is girls look at you panicked thinking, but I don't want to build a bridge. And I'm like, well, it's not all about building a bridge. There are very vast and varied careers that are available. So what I'll do is I will talk about my role, but I will make it very relatable. So again, I won't talk to them about a DDoS attack. I would talk to them about how the work I do helps capture fraudsters, criminals on the internet who operate on Instagram, who try and attract 14, 15-year-old girls to open bank accounts, and then they launder money through those accounts. So the work I do, effectively, is trying to secure a criminal conviction of a fraudster. And at that point, you can see the light bulb going off. And again, that's the skill that I have learned to use over time. It's about conveying something technical into what the end user, how they consume that, and what appeals to them. So you really don't have to be that deeply technical person sitting with your Star Trek t-shirt on and your Birkenstocks. It's absolutely, not that case at all. We require a whole diverse range of skills within IT. The other thing about working with getting girls into STEM is don't wait for a glossy brochure to hit your inbox. I remember the first time I sort of dipped my toe into the water of this. I went out and I went along to my son's school, a primary school, and God bless him, my son thinks I'm a security officer for the bank. He thinks I wear a high-vis jacket and I push people away at the door. So there's probably a little bit of work to do there. And what we did was, the school was so receptive. They want to hear about all the different career routes that are open. So just one chance encounter in my son's class led to invitations to high schools within Edinburgh, and to the point where I was inundated. I couldn't take all of these invitations and go out and speak about STEM and the bank and cyber and what it is and what it isn't. So that again allowed me to leverage those invitations and share them with my female colleagues back at my home office. We touched on women's networks previously in a couple of the talks already. The two sort of points I'd like to make on those are, there's sort of two aspects. There's the internal, hopefully your organisation has some form of internal women's network. I use that very much as a safe collaborative environment. So when I have an innovative idea or a new product that I really want to sort of bounce around, I take that to that nurturing place where I have a lot of contacts that will give me excellent feedback. And then externally, I attend lots of, in my industry, in banking, I'll do women in banking forums. And again, that's not only good from a networking point of view, but it's also good for seeing what your peers are doing from a women in technology aspect as well. So that's the kind of tools that I use about getting girls into STEM. So if I can just sum up some of the things and pick out some of the sort of highlights from my ramblings over the past few minutes, what I would say to you, first of all, is there definitely is a place for creativity in STEM, said the woman standing on the stage with the Mary Poppins skirt on. Also, stop doubting yourself. I spoke to a lot of women yesterday during the mentoring sessions who were toying with the idea of maybe having a go at another side of their job or maybe going for a step up. Don't toy with it. I can assure you, when a male colleague and a female colleague are presented with the same job description, how a man looks at it is he'll go through and say, well, I can do 70% of that, so hell yeah, I'm applying. A woman will look at it and go, oh, I can't do those three things, so I can't apply. Stop doubting yourself. If there's something that you want to go for, shout about it. Let people know. People are not mind readers. You need to go and let people know what your skills are. Absolutely, you might not be able to know those 3 points, but there's nothing. There's no such thing as perfection out there. There are things that are learned on the way. And my final point is be bold. Stop asking permission. Just one thing. If you just do one thing this year, pick out something that you feel really passionate about. Don't ask anyone's permission. Go away and work out what that great idea is and what it looks like, and really put some flesh to the bones and take it to the next person. Because chances are, if you just go up and sort of meekly say, "I'd really like to do this," you'll be shot down in flames. So be big, be bold, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Leslie. Thank you, Leslie. What a great learning experience listening to you. Thank you so much. So why do we need more women in top positions in science, and what can we do about it? Our next esteemed speaker will discuss that in more detail for us. She is Ingrid Wönig-Trohl. She is the Senior Vice President for Strategy at Robert Bosch Foundation. I welcome you to the stage, Ingrid.
It is such a pleasure to be back in Warsaw, and I really regret that I wasn't here yesterday, because I would have seen many, many more of these amazing women that we've just seen this morning. What I also regret is that those women weren't so abundant when I was younger, a little bit more than half my life ago when I was a postdoc at MIT or even earlier at university. We didn't have so much encouragement and role models back then. So I will talk about why we need more women in leading positions in science and what we can do about it. It will be an overview of the challenges. Of them, you probably heard many of them yesterday, and why we still face these challenges, but why it is important to overcome them, and in the end I will provide a few solutions. First, let me start with this picture. This is a picture of this year's Members' Assembly of the very distinguished German Academy of Science in Leopoldina. And why I show this, it's an image that we find still very normal in Germany. You see mostly men, mostly with white hair. I guess I can see two women in this, and one of them is a former high school teacher and now the science minister, so she also is not a man. And in order to underpin this image, I would like to give you a few numbers. That is the percentage of female members in national science academies. Let me pinpoint to the percentage in Poland, which is 4%. I must say that is pretty poor. But in Germany, with 10%, we are not doing much better. Taken together of Leopoldina and Acatech, we only have 10% female membership in the most prestigious academies of science. But the national academies, of course, are not an exception. And this is why the United Nations have chosen gender equality as one of their Sustainable Development Goals, which they issued in 2015. If you see in politics, there was a growth between 2000 and 2017 from 13.2% to 23.4%. That looks impressive at first sight. But if you calculate, it's only a growing of 0.6 points per year. And if we continue in that speed, it will take 44 years until we reach the 50%. Also, only 1/3 are in middle and senior management positions still. So we know why this is one of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. Let's move back to science. In this graph, I show you, and I think it's an excerpt of the SHE figures that is published by the European Commission every other year. This is the percentage of women in Europe. And I have put on this picture, I haven't taken all of them, the lowest number, which is in Belgium was 15.6. The highest number in Romania, I'll come back to that in a moment. The average in the EU is 20.9, but Germany, and I'm very embarrassed about that, is the second but last, with only 70.3% women in top-level positions in science. That includes the professorships or a Max Planck professorship or something like that. I think these numbers speak for themselves, and we should do something about it. I'm sure you have seen this picture many times. Yesterday, it is the famous picture about the leaky pipeline. And that leads to it that if younger women go to university or find themselves in any PhD programs, they think everything is fine because 40–60%, that is a corridor that I find still reasonably acceptable. Until they reach PhD, if you take all disciplines, they move within this corridor of being between 40 and 60%. The real drop happens after the PhD when you get to the thing that we call Habilitation in Germany and later to the top-level positions. The women drop down to 20% or 20.9% in Europe, as I said, on average, and the men move up to 80% to the top-level positions. Let's have a look to the authorships, because they also tell you a lot if you look at them in more detail. 29.8 or roughly 30% of all authorships are women. It's not so bad, you may think, but only 18.1 can be found amongst those in the key author position, which is mostly the last one. And that happens specifically in the high-impact medical research fields where really only 20% are group leaders or even department heads. That is definitely not enough. Another graph with numbers. This is the vast gender gap behind the Nobel Prizes, and here I show a picture of all Nobel Prizes that have been awarded since 1901 until very recently. That is a reflection of 8th of October of this year. Only 5.5% of all Nobel Prizes are women, and 94.5% are men. The situation gets even worse if you take the Nobel laureates only in the STEM disciplines, such as physiology and medicine, chemistry or physics. And there it is, out of 605 Nobel laureates, only 18 are women. That is less than 3%. Is it possible that only that few very, very outstanding women have been in this area? I don't think so. So why do we have so few women in leadership positions in science still? I'm sure the cultural forces continue to stand in the way, ranging from, and we've heard that before, girls being steered toward other professions from very early age. Sexual harassment does play a role, and I don't know whether you've seen an interview with Frances Cordova, of the head of the National Science Foundation, when she also joined the Me Too debate and also says that sexual harassment really drives women out of a scientific career. Of course, we talk about the potentially career-stalling effects of having children, but that is so obvious, and even men, when you talk to them about the gender equality, they immediately come up, oh, we should do something about kindergarten and things like that, so I won't even touch that. What I think is the most important reason why we still have this gender inequality, and that is the gender bias. And when I talk about gender bias, I talk about 3 in 4 people, not men, people, including women, of course, believe are gender biased, even moderately. If you don't believe it, take that Harvard test. You can find it on the website. It is an implicit test. I did it myself, and guess what I was? Yes, I am moderately gender biased, if you're very honest with yourself. I will do it back in 2 or 3 years or 4 years. I'm 60 now, and I still am gender biased. Or maybe it's because of that I'm gender biased. So you find that gender bias has a particularly strong effect on the academic disciplines, emphasizing all the time the academic brilliance of their scholars, such as philosophy, physics, or mathematics. These subjects or disciplines are much more male-dominated than others, and that is despite the evidence that cognitive capacities do not depend on gender. Women are considered by less as intellectually brilliant than white males. And this is also underpinned by a study that was done in the Princeton University. Of course, there are many other reasons, such as the lack of straightforward career path. I myself was a victim out of that. When I came back from the United States, where I did a postdoc at MIT, I didn't really dare. Of course, I'm of a slightly different generation than the majority in this room, to go for this unsecure path that was waiting ahead of me, because I also wanted to start a family. So I applied for a job that was promising me a more permanent career. I think the names of most STEM disciplines are also not appealing to women, and I give you one example. Women really prefer to go for fields which promise potential benefits to humans. One example is really being observed in the Technical University in Darmstadt, where they introduced the woman of medical technology, which is really hardcore engineering, what the women study there. But immediately, just labeling this specific field, medical technology, they could recruit many more women into this study. But not only the labels of disciplines matter, it's also the language that matters. And in many countries, gender bias is cemented in its language. I guess that's certainly true in Germany, where we still have male and female. And when there is a call for applications, you usually call for only the male version. It also appeals to female. Women tend to underestimate their talents. We have heard that quite a bit this morning. And I think, again, the gender bias is responsible for that, which is really deeply rooted in our culture. Women are less visible than men. We've heard that already. And there is the glass ceiling. Perception matters. Women are considered aggressive, whereas the men with the same features are assertive. Women are considered difficulties. Men, behaving the same, have character. And this is even more true, and let me tell you this from my perspective, when we approach the glass ceiling at around the age of 50 and plus. So why is it so important to have more women in STEM? And this is just a summary of what you already know, of course. We do not exploit the talent tool, the pool of talents. And we all know that there are only a very small percentage in the population of really highly, highly talented people, amongst both men and women. But if you think that 80% of the top positions are occupied by men, you start wondering, are they maybe more mediocre and not the highest talent? And wouldn't it be better to have the highest talent of women also in this pool of the highest top-level positions? Women do ask different questions and solve other problems. What we think of science problems affect everyone, children, women, and men, and what science can solve, and for whom things are designed, have a lot to do with who is doing the research. We have already also heard that mixed teams are more efficient and creative, and a McKinsey study has actually underpinned this, that companies with a higher proportion of women in management positions are financially more successful. And after all, half the population is female, and publicly funded institutions that fund science, such as universities, should reflect the demographic composition of the population at all stages of their careers. So I do believe that gender equality is a value in itself. So I'll show you a list of possible solutions and have only time to go slightly more into detail of a few of them. Quota, of course, then anti-bias training, starting at the top level of research institutions, change language and labels, encourage networking without a formal agenda, maybe the hidden agenda, introduce straightforward career paths, enhance transparency for recruiting criteria, enhance visibility of excellent women, and provide leadership training and other programs for women. So let's go to the quota. Here I show you two graphs. One is the women's representation in advisory boards in 3 countries without quota. That is Portugal, Germany, and Austria. You can see the numbers for yourself. That's not doing very well. Whereas Norway, who's had legislated quotas, already have 36% of women in their advisory boards, and the same is true in Iceland, even better. They have 46% of women in advisory boards. Now let's have a quick look at the representation in national parliaments, and I pinpoint to Belgium. Belgium in 1994 did not have any quota, and there was only 12% in national parliaments. Now, 20 years later, they have 39%. I think it looks impressive, and it seems and proof that quota work, specifically if you compare it to the other countries, but it's still going rather low, because after 20 years they have not even reached the corridor that I personally find acceptable, which is the corridor between 40 and 60% men or women, either way. The most common argument against quota in research is, and I hear that very often still nowadays, from Max Planck directors, Max Planck presidents, but also from company heads, we select on the basis of scientific excellence. That is easy to agree, but it is wrong. So why is this wrong? There's only a small proportion of outstanding talents, as I said before, among men and women. And if men occupy 80% of top positions, then there must be many less talented in these positions, as I said before. So if we recruit on the basis of excellence, that must mean we have to look for the very best among men and women for our top positions. But of course, going for quota, you have to do it in a differentiated way. The low-hanging fruits are to fill the positions in committees, advisory boards, and so on, all the committees that are the positions where you really take decisions. For the top positions in research, it might be easier for some areas, more difficult for other areas, but you really have to go out and actively seek for the women for the many reasons that I've said before. And also in the research funding, quota may work against your actual goal. So I have to leave the quota, even though I would love to continue talking about them, because I used to not believe in quota when I was below 30 as a postdoc at MIT. Now I am a firm believer in the quota. Another very important thing is the anti-bias training in the highest management level. I think only a firm conviction at the top management level that gender balance matters will actually lead to gender equality. And I was just asked to speed up a little bit, so I'll leave that point up to here. But I do think at the top management level, there needs to be conviction that I would just quickly go into enhancing visibility. The Robert Bosch Foundation, we started 8 years ago on a platform where if you Google academia.net, you will find the most outstanding female scientists in Europe. As of today, 2,791 profiles you will find there. So if you have to occupy committees and so on, just go there. They cannot self-nominate. They're nominated according to a set of criteria by the most prestigious members of the academia net, including the national academies and so on and so on. So let me summarize. Inequality is persisting. Measurement should target the most at gender bias. Start at the top level management. Make recruitment criteria transparent. Quota do work. We should enhance the visibility of women and encourage networking without formal agendas. I thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Ingrid. It's great to have you here. Our next speaker is based in Silicon Valley. She is an executive coach and a writer. She started as a technologist some years ago, and when she saw that she joined the old boys club, well, that was the moment when she saw how difficult it was for women to pursue their careers in tech. And from that stems her great passion to be a mentor and coach to, as of today, some of the leading women in Silicon Valley. She also is an author of a book, The Strong Woman Trap, a feminist guide for getting your life back. And today, she will tell us that if you want to unlock the potential of half of the world, become a mentor. Ladies and gentlemen, Sasha Mobley. The clicker is on there.
Good morning. So my being up here is the result of quite a bit of self-mentoring because Bianca asked me to be a speaker at this plenary 2 days ago. So I wrote my talk at midnight last night, and I'm glad that I woke up because I had insomnia because of jet lag. So I know, this sounds like I haven't planned at all, but I spent actually 2 months preparing for the talk that I gave yesterday on mentorship, and I spent somewhat less time preparing this talk. So I'm being transparent with you because I want to let you know that even though I've only spent this much time preparing it, I think that the central message is important, it's relevant, and I'm excited to give it to you. Also, it's a little bit of a phishing attack because even though my title of my speech says how to unlock half the world, how to unlock the potential of half the world by being a mentor, there is a hidden agenda. So I hope you enjoy what I have to say. So I want to start off by saying that it's been a privilege to meet as many of the women that I have the last couple of days. And when Ambassador Mosbacher spoke of the McKinsey report and how $12 trillion could be put into the economy by empowering women in the economic sector, I was really encouraged to hear that number because in the World Economic Forum report on the gender gap, we're actually 217 years away from reaching that goal. So it's a little bit late for us, but what I want to do is speak about how mentorship can influence the areas that actually can powerfully influence change and bring about this great influx of talent to the workplace. Mentoring is a feminist, oh, thank you. I don't know what that did, but I hope it helped. Mentoring is a feminist act. In its highest form, mentoring is a feminist act. And what I mean by that is by encouraging, not just encouraging women, but helping them work through the kind of mind traps that we constantly find ourselves in, we are advancing this goal to close the gap on economic opportunity. Let me give you an example from my life. I was talking to a journalist yesterday, and she wanted to talk to me about feminism, and people do not like feminism. They do not want to be associated with feminism. Even in the crowd of this room, I hear people very much downplaying the association with feminism. And I think there are some real misconceptions about what feminism is. So I'm going to give you a little encapsulation of feminism so that the next time this comes up for you, you can clear yourself out of any of the problems that come associated with feminism. One, feminism does not state that women are greater than men. So if people are getting hung up on the idea that we are trying to create a society where women dominate men, where women are essentially better than men, where men are somehow taking a subordinated role, this is not the mission of feminism at all. Nor is feminism special treatment of women. If you mean special treatment, treating us like actual human beings with rights and talents and goals of our own, well, I don't think of that as special treatment. I think of that as human treatment. What feminism actually is it's the promotion of the political, economic, personal, and social equality of everyone, not just men, not just women, not just the people who, fall in categories that do not align with their biological identity. It is the right and privilege and responsibility of everyone to be their full self. And so feminism is not so much about women, but it is about everyone being their full selves. And mentorship is a way to encourage and bring out those qualities in each person who is mentored. So let's dive in, shall we? We aren't there yet, by the way. If you want to be less tired, get behind feminism. This is a pull quote from the book that I published, and the journalist that I spoke to yesterday said, hey, I'm really curious about what this means. What does it mean that I'll be less tired if I get behind feminism? So I'm going to share a little story. When I started a role about 4 years ago, I went through one of the worst crises of my life. My brother committed suicide. And this was just weeks after I had taken a role that was very high pressure, that there were high expectations on me. So I was trying to get into this new role, and I was trying to help my brother manage his life, manage the things that were going on for him that eventually led to him taking his own life. In addition to that, I was trying to help my mother, who was 90 years old at the time, cope with, the emotional pressure of what was happening to her son. I was trying to show that I could, perform and be the person that I was hired. And I was trying to do it all kind of under this cloak of, I've got this handled. I've handled this. I'm the person who can deal best with these things. I could deal with them alone. I don't need to, I don't need any support. What I really need is myself. And I found out over the coming weeks and months after that how wrong that thinking was. I crumbled. I did not live up to any of the things that I thought that I could do on my own. And I know that if I had been more transparent, if I had asked for support, if I had tried to be more human instead of trying to be strong, I would have served myself and everyone around me more. And so the promise of feminism is for women that you don't have to be the strongest person in the room. You do not have to take every last thing on. You will be better for everyone and the world if you ask for support instead of being the support of everyone. So if you want to be less tired, get behind feminism. If you want to stop proving that you're as good as a man, get behind feminism. So everything that Dr. Scholl said in her previous, in her presentation about bias and about the perception of excellence being equated with specifically white old men, there's a lot of pressure on women, and it's a false kind of logic that you have to prove yourself that you're as good as a man. And so this becomes one of those mind traps that women get themselves into, of having to always focus their efforts so they can prove themselves as good as a man. So when we were talking about, you know, the resume thing, the job application thing, men are like, hey, I've got a few of these qualifications, I'm gonna go for it. Women are like, I don't know, I don't have every qualification. I don't know that I'm good enough. In the meantime, you know, they're trying to bolster it, like they're putting all this extra stuff in, like, you know, they're carrying this bag of proof that they're good enough, that we are carrying a bag of proof that we are good enough, that men just skip along and they don't have to carry this bag. So it's a huge burden. And so, you know, you cannot prove yourself to be good enough as a man, and being good enough as a man is not what you're called to do. What you're called to do is your true work, your true visionary work. It is authentic to you. So if you're caught up in proving yourself as good as a man, you are never going to focus on the thing that you are meant to do. You are never going to solve the world's problems. So as mentors, guiding the people that we work with away from the kind of thinking that they have to be as good as a man is going to change the world. So that's another reason why you should get behind feminism. If you want to live authentically instead of just fitting in, you should get behind feminism. So a lot of advice that some mentors give, and I would say that this is like the mentorship of a different era, and maybe it was appropriate at a different time, was that you need to find a way to package yourself so you are acceptable to your male colleagues. You have to find a better way to talk to them. You need to know what their triggers are. You need to know how to, you know, maybe assert yourself more, or, you know, tone it down because you're scaring them with being so out there. And maybe I'm scaring some of you in the audience right now, I'm not sure. But if you are spending all your time trying to package yourself perfectly so that you can be acceptable, so you can fit in, so that you can be even one of the boys, you are never going to do your best work. You are never going to contribute to the level that you can. So if you want to be authentic and stop fitting in, you should get behind feminism. If you want to stop fixing yourself, you should get behind feminism. Okay, so I want to just say it really clearly. You cannot self-improve your way outside, beyond gender bias. There is no amount of achievement that you can cross if you want to get beyond bias. Right now, there are people calling for Sheryl Sandberg to step down because of some, you know, they're making an argument that the mistakes she made were personal, you know, about her personal brand. You know, every time you look at a woman in power who has worked so hard to get where they are, you would think that they would finally have launched themselves beyond bias. But the fact of the matter is that regardless of the amount of achievement you have, it is not going to shield you from bias. It is still going to come and get you. And the promise of feminism is to work towards a society where we have put bias aside. So if you want to stop fixing yourself, you should get behind feminism. So in Lean In, Sheryl Sandberg said that if you want women to contribute to the level that they are able to, you need to make child rearing as important and as dignified as having a career outside. And you know, if our world is going to survive, we still need to have children. I mean, maybe at a lower rate, but we still need to have children. And those children need to be brought up with love, and they need to be brought up with education, and they need to be instructed in how to, you know, be part of a society that is growing and thriving. And in order to do that, they need parentage. But that is not to be the exclusive realm of women. This is the sort of thing that is coded language for lesser work. Women's work is considered to be lesser work. Until men can take up something as important as childcare and feel that they have pride and dignity in doing so, and that they are not going to be berated for it or thought that they have missed the boat, there is no way that women are ever going to be able to participate to the degree that we need them to. So if you want men to experience pride and dignity in childcare, you need to get behind feminism. So mentorship is really about imparting experience and helping people work with the mental traps that they put themselves in and helping them experience their greatest potential. But I have to be honest, you cannot give that to someone else if you do not give it to yourself. If you do not look at these things and see yourself in each one of them, if you do not see how these things influence yourself, you cannot mentor another person to rise to that either. So you need to give it to yourself. You need to live it to give it. So if you want to change the world, you need to become a mentor. You need to mentor women and men, to include each other, to collaborate, to bring their greatest genius and creativity to bear, to deal with the problems of the world together. And you need to get behind feminism. Thank you.
Thank you, Sasha. Sasha, thank you so much for preparing such an inspiring speech on such a short notice. We really appreciate this. Our last piece of the first panel session, it actually will be, well, not a panel, but an interview. And who will be interviewed by whom? We have Robert Stanikowski, who is Managing Director of Boston Consulting Group Warsaw, and he will be interviewed by Oskar Adamkiewicz of BCG as well. Welcome.
Hello, everyone. So we are supposed to have here today Angela Wang, the partner of BCG in China. Nevertheless, due to medical reasons, she needed to cancel her trip to Europe. This is why I believe that we need at least two men to substitute such a great woman as Angela is. Ladies and gentlemen, Robert Stanikowski, partner of BCG. My name is Oskar Adamkiewicz. Welcome, everyone.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me here.
Robert, so could you share with us what is your background?
Actually, like, this conference is very close to my heart because, yes, I'm a partner at BCG, but by passion, education, and many years of professional experience, I'm an engineer. I started coding when I was 10, and yes, that's actually true. So I started programming sometime in the mid-80s. So the first languages after Polish, the first language I learned was Turbo Pascal and BASIC. Who remembers Turbo Pascal? Wow, that's awesome. Yes, so the first, I didn't have a computer at that time, so the first programs I wrote in a notebook with a pen or pencil, and then I went to my colleagues who had computers, like who remembers ZX Spectrum or Commodore. Exactly. So these are like the old machines, right? So the first codes I wrote there, and then I went to I graduated from the Faculty of Electronics and Information Technology and the Warsaw University of Technology. And then this is basically how my career started. And just one thing that I'm really happy to see, because when I was studying, I started the university in 1996. On my academic year, out of 300 people, we had only 6 ladies. So seeing here a few hundred engineers, just like, that's like, wow, that's like makes me very happy.
Thank you, Robert. So, Robert, could you tell us what are the superpowers of digital?
Yes, like the digital is one of the probably most used or more sometimes abused words recently, right? So, like to me, digital and the superpower of digital is ability to connect people. And this connecting people, connecting the world, it gives a lot of possibilities and a lot of power to more people and more firms than ever before, right? So right now, very small companies are able to actually do their business globally. Many like NGOs are able to actually make a much bigger impact on the world. I'm a big fan of organizations like Kickstarter or Siepomaga.pl, like where just thousands of people with relatively small money have real direct impact on the world. So to me, this ability to connect people, ability to give small firms kind of power to change the whole industries, this is like the biggest superpower of digital that I see. Like before the conference, when we spoke to Angela Wang when she was preparing for this conference, she wanted to tell you actually about the digital in China, which is like a fascinating world. And I was in China a few weeks ago, and like I found really how the country has changed. It's fascinating, right? So you have, so for instance, the research on artificial intelligence, like they're doing much faster than the US. And the face recognition algorithms, the Chinese face recognition algorithms are perceived as the most advanced in the world. You have applications like everybody's using WeChat, right? We are using Facebook Messenger or WhatsApp. They're using WeChat, which is like a super app. So I don't know if you heard that WeChat has over 900 million daily active users. So this is a superpower, because through WeChat you don't only do chatting or reading the news feed. You can book a doctor's appointment. You can use city services through WeChat. You can buy insurance, buy anything basically. So you can make payments. So like all stores in China, they accept WeChat payments. That's amazing actually.
Robert, you're leading the digital BCG for our region, and could you share with us what are those most difficult experiences that became this valuable lesson in your life?
I'm just thinking, where do I start? Because I must say, like, sometimes when I look back at the career, it's, I think even like a very successful career, it's like a road from a mistake to a mistake, right? Sometimes from a failure to a failure, because I just believe that from failures and mistakes you learn the most. So what I would just encourage everybody is just not to be afraid of making mistakes and making failures, because just like if you want to change something, if you want to do something meaningful, especially something that nobody has ever done, then most likely you will make many mistakes. But this is actually what well, sometimes it's actually great when you in the hindsight, obviously. Examples of this, like, look, I'm an engineer, right? Like, and like as an engineer, as a programmer, then as a consultant, like I never need to sell. I never needed to convince customers, clients to buy services, products, right? So that was not my kind of I didn't feel good at it at all, right? And then you kind of grow in BCG, you are on your path to a partner, and the partner role is obviously a commercial role. So that was kind of a bit scary, right? But actually then I kind of realized that I think to how I learned to sell, I think was similar to how I learned to dance. Because like before I started university, typically on when like my friends were dancing, I typically were actually checking the walls, right? Kind of where they stand really fast. So, but then I've taken some dancing lessons, and I started to be better and better at it and better. And I found out that I'm really good at it. I really love it. So then I kind of I just used the same kind of technique or strategy to be kind of comfortable in the commercial activities. So because like selling is to some extent something like dancing, right? In a ballroom dancing, you need to really feel your partner. You need to really listen to your partner, right? And at the same time take the lead, but take the lead in a way that she feels comfortable. Right? So and here, like in commercial, like you really need to listen to your client. You really need to take the lead. You need to kind of persuade them, but at the same time listen to them, listen what they want, what they need. So actually and slowly, I started to be better and better at that. So kind of from an engineer to a commercial guy, that was quite a path. But I believe that anybody actually can do it. Other mistakes, like motivating people in the long run, for instance, right? Again, as an engineer, like you don't. I never needed to motivate people, right? I needed to motivate my computer to actually run the code, and then I needed to speak primarily in Java or Visual Basic, but then motivating people in the long run to sometimes run very long projects. Not to burn out, to kind of feel motivated, to feel like the bigger meaning of what they're doing. This is actually something that you slowly learn, right? And sometimes actually you learn most through difficult situations. Sometimes people leave because they just want to change something that are in their world, and this is always painful for me. So yeah, these are like many lessons, actually.
Robert. I have one last question. What you would like to tell to all of those young engineers that are just starting their career path?
So first of all, I think being engineers, you actually in the world that is already here and is coming even more and more forcefully, you actually have an advantage. Last weekend, I was in London at a Poland 2.0 conference, and I met students from the best universities in the UK there, like from Cambridge, Oxford, London School of Economics, and many of these students, they are telling me that actually to get the best jobs, more and more, the programming skills are more and more important. So the employers are actually asking about it. And some companies that I'm working with, like even like large traditional banks, they are actually sending many of their kind of non-IT people, like lawyers, back office specialists, product managers, to programming courses. So they can, and technology courses, so they can better understand technology, so they can actually have common language with the engineers. And like what I found through my professional life is, for an engineer, it's much easier to learn business than for people in business to learn technology. So I strongly believe that you guys just have an advantage. So just be confident. Don't be afraid to apply for the jobs that, like, before you would never have thought about, because this is just leverage this advantage. And second thing is, I would say, I think the easiest, like you learn a lot on the job, right? But there are many situations where you just don't know what to do. And I strongly believe there was, like in the last presentation, there was a lot about mentorship. I strongly believe in mentorship. So finding a person like who is like a more senior manager, who is an entrepreneur, who you trust, and actually they can help you with provide their perspective on and share their experience, provide their perspective on what challenges are in front of you. This is extremely helpful, right? So I had such people in my previous job before I joined BCG. I have such people in BCG. That is really, really important to have people that you actually trust, because otherwise you're just by yourself, right? So this is something, and I also advise courage, right? Some people, I'm really happy that in Poland we have more and more startups. Obviously many startups fail, but that's not a bad thing actually, because this is a huge lesson. So lesson of management, of talking to clients, of inventing new things. So I strongly encourage to try, especially when you're young and you have less to lose. This is much easier. So do try.
Robert, thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, please a big applause for Robert Stanikowski.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for being with us. Thank you so much. Haven't we learned a lot over this session? We need to wrap this up. I will meet you at the next plenary session at 10 to 3 p.m. And we will have a short coffee break now, so make new friends, grab some coffee, have fun. And we will see you at the main stage at 11:30 for the first panel discussion that will be hosted by my friend Renata Kaczoruk. We'll see you very soon. Thank you.